When you say transgender, what do you mean?
When I say transgender, I mean a person whose identity about themselves does not match the biological sex that they were assigned at birth. In other words, let me give you some definitions first.
Okay.
There's sex or gender. That's what the doctor tells you are, right? Male, female.
Sure.
There's gender identity, which is how you see yourself, how you identify yourself.
Okay.
And then there's gender expression. Gender expression is how you dress, how you present yourself to other people, what clothes you may wear. That's your gender expression, or even how you may talk. So with those three terms, I was assigned male at birth.
Okay.
But I have not identified as a male as long as I can remember. Since I was 4 years old, I remember identifying as female.
Okay. Thank you. So what is the belief associated with you being transgender?
The gender assigned to us at birth should not dictate who we are.
The gender assigned to us at birth should not dictate who we are. At some point, I might change the belief that you're discussing in the description of it, so to make sure that we are talking about it in a way that, to me, when I hear the word should, it's more of a value judgment about the way the world should be, as opposed to a belief being either true or false.
Okay, well, let's take out should.
Okay.
We can take that out. Gender assigned to us at birth does not dictate who we are.
Okay.
Does that make
Yes.
better sense? Good.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Sure.
They both made sense.
I'm malleable.
They both made sense, but it helps to talk about it, I think, better when we're talking about it, whether a belief is true or not.
Right.
Okay. How do you know your belief is true?
I know my belief is true, not only from my personal experience of being transgender, but also from a great deal of research that is not only scientific, but also personable research of other people who have also felt this way. So it's based on three things: my experience, scientific research, and stories and testimonials of other people through support groups or through reading that have felt the exact same way that I do.
Personal experience,
Yes.
scientific research,
Yes.
and stories of other people or situations you've come in contact with other people,
Yes.
the personal experience of other people.
Of other people.
Okay. Of those three things, what would you say is the primary reason why you believe the belief?
The primary reason I believe the belief is because I know what happened to me. I know how I feel. The science and the other people's testimony, those were just supporting my thesis or my belief. Those were just in support of it. But I know I have felt this way since I was 4.
So the primary reason why you believe the belief is personal experience.
It's personal experience. It's what happened to me.
Okay. What do you think if someone asked you, is personal experience a reliable way to know whether something is objectively real and true?
I would say no, not necessarily. I think there needs to be other data that supports that. We all have different experiences. My experience is true to me, but it is true to me only. I cannot speak for other people. So no, my personal experience does not alone support my belief.
Yes.
That your biological sex defines your gender identity.
I see what you're saying. How about this? Regarding your belief that your biological sex does not define your gender identity, What, on a scale from 1 to 7, first of all, how strongly do you feel about this belief?
I feel a 7.
Okay. Is there something that you could learn, do you think, that would even make you more confident about the belief? That I know you're already at a 7, and that's pretty high, maybe as high as it can go, but is there something that would even make you more confident about that belief that you could learn from yourself or someone else or research or something that would make you say to yourself, you know, that belief is even stronger than I originally thought?
I would believe that continued scientific research would help support that. I believe anytime you invoke science, you're getting to the truth of the matter. It's not based on your faith or your experiences necessarily. It's based on research, data, experimentation. When science accompanies a belief, I believe there's a strong reason to also feel stronger about your belief due to the fact that science has researched it. In other words, just as an example, faith didn't give us the vaccines. It was science that gave us the vaccines. The idea that the world revolves around the earth was based in faith, not on science. Science eventually proved that. So science is continuing to evolve. And as science continues to evolve, for me, I see more and more proof that this is, in fact, science. It is based on scientific fact. So it could be a large experiment. Right now, the experiments we have are based on samples because it's not on a census, right? Are you transgender or not? It's based on scientific research that takes samples. And based upon samples, the scientific belief is 0.6, anywhere from 0.6 to 1% of people are transgender. Now, there are a lot of people who are transgender who remain closeted. So they may or may not even provide the truth. So we don't really know where everyone is. But there's approximately 1.4 million of us that identify as transgender.
Well, that was really well said. And for one thing, I can tell why you're in Toastmasters. That was really, I really understood exactly where you're coming from. Thank you. So it sounds like compared to me who can't talk, it sounds like that if you were to become more confident about your belief, the way that would happen is that if you learned some more research, some more studies were done, I assume more objective kinds of research that was done, that pointed to that belief being true, you'd believe it even stronger.
Yes.
Let me turn around.
Okay, I figured you would.
Is there something that you would learn, maybe, that would make your belief less strong than a 7?
If there were scientific evidence, perhaps that said that no, there's really no, gender identity is not related. Gender identity actually is related to biological sex. Here's a study that shows that. That will not change my belief in what I have experienced. But it may tell me, well, maybe there's people out there who might be thinking they're transgender and maybe they're not. I am open to any kind of scientific research as long as it's based in scientific methods.
Just so I understand what you're saying, you're telling me that there is a certain scenario where your belief could become stronger, but there's not a scenario where your belief could become weaker.
There is for other people, but not for me. I still know my experience. So if science were to say, well, there's no such difference between biological sex and gender identity, which there hasn't been a study of that, but let's say one did come out, I would say, that's very interesting. I should take that into consideration. But for me, that will not change how I think, how I feel, and how I express myself.
I see what you're saying, and I don't want to discount your personal experience.
Right.
That's not what I'm.
No, I understand.
My role here is more as to examine the belief kind of in a collaborative way, and to understand under what circumstances would you change the confidence level you have about that belief. And I always find it interesting, regardless of what the belief is, when someone tells me that they would become more confident about a belief in certain circumstances, but they wouldn't become less confident about that belief in certain circumstances. And I just find that interesting when that occurs. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, but I do not want this to be about absolute truths. I want this to be an open discussion where we talk about events or studies that could occur that might point to evidence that discounts my theory.
Yeah.
And although there hasn't been any yet, I'm sure.
And that would be hypothetical.
It would be hypothetical.
Yeah.
So we can't really talk in hypotheticals because it hasn't occurred yet. Although you might be able to find some study on, I have looked at other websites that try to discount this, and it did not change my mind because there's lots of different factors at play here. But if there were a scientifically done research model that showed that perhaps the two are not related at all, I would think about that. I'm not saying so much I'd lose confidence, but I would take it into consideration amongst all the other evidence.
So research studies saying that they're not related, and when we say not related, what would we be saying about the belief? Just trying to understand.
I'm sorry, they would be related. So in other words,
okay,
a study would come out saying your biological sex and your gender identity are the same.
I see. That they're...
Although that's very hard to prove because we don't know how everybody feels about their identity.
And maybe we should examine the belief more. When we're saying that they are not related, that there is a zero correlation between them?
I would not say that. I would say it's an impossible question to answer. And here's why. Think about when you were born. If you can remember back to where you were a little baby, think about looking up and seeing what color your room was.
Yeah.
Think about the onesie you were in.
Right.
What color was that?
Right.
Think about as you grew older, let's say you went to a birthday party and the girls were all wearing party dresses and the boys were probably dressed in a shirt and slacks. Think about all the ways that you did not get to decide your gender identity. And you weren't really given the choice because all of society told you that you are to act like a boy, you're to dress like a boy, you're to have these feelings as a boy.
Right.
And if you step outside of those feelings,
I see,
you're going to be corrected.
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about my own personal experience.
Yes.
And my own personal experience probably aligns with what you're saying, that my gender identity has corresponded with my gender. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, gender was placed on us. Gender identity was placed on all of us.
And in my personal experience, I've honestly, because probably I'm in the majority, I've never thought about it.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And what you're telling me is that there is no relationship or little relationship or a loose relationship between our gender and the gender that we assign to a gender that how we see ourselves.
There is a hugely strong association with that. As a matter of fact,
what is that association?
The association is the gender you're born into, the biological sex you're born into, greatly correlates to how your brain develops as male or female.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we could say it's 100% minus the 0.6%. Well, and then you can also include intersex people, which is another variation.
I see what you're saying.
So it's very strong. That's what the way you grew up and you identified.
I see.
What I'm saying is it's very strong correlation that you would have developed a masculine brain,
Right.
being male. But there are studies that show your sex organs are actually developed within the first 2 months of a pregnancy. And the second half of the pregnancy is actually where the brain develops. And the brain develops as part of being overwhelmed with different types of hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some incidences, this is a scientific fact,
Mm-hmm.
where a strong dose of estrogen or a strong dose of testosterone may not get released in the same way.
And I'm aware of those studies.
Okay.
And I'm also aware of the studies that even corresponds with birth order a little bit.
There's that. Yes, there is birth order. I
Yeah.
happen to be the youngest. I believe.
And I think that corresponds.
Yes,
with the
it
youngest,
does, because the last pregnancy can have an excessive wash of estrogen
Right.
in the child when it's born.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a belief you have,
Yes.
and you're telling me that it's based on personal experience, but if you really want to know why your belief is true, I think you're telling me that you're relying on the science,
Yes.
or you're relying on the personal experience.
I'm relying on a combination of all three. I do not believe that one person's personal experience defines the truth. I do not. I think it takes, again, scientific studies, it takes testimonials of other people. There's a lot of things that have contributed to my growth in this belief.
Okay.
Because when I was born in the 60s and grew up in the 70s,
Yeah,
I could have no belief such as this. I had no idea.
I see.
And science didn't really either. We were just known as either, mentally ill or transsexuals or transvestites.
Right.
And nobody really knew.
And related back to personal experience,
Sure.
if Linda is sitting next to you,
Okay.
and Linda has not had that experience,
Right.
and she doesn't think it's true because she does not have that experience that it is true, what would we say about Linda's belief that is not a true belief?
I would say to Linda, just because you don't have that belief doesn't mean it's not true. Or just because you feel that way doesn't mean it's not true.
And how would you show Linda that?
I would show Linda that by showing her scientific data. I would show her statistics that show that there is a percentage of people out here that your gender identity is not based completely on biological sex. There's plenty of evidence to show that. Just as the same as if, let's say, that I were gay, and Linda said, "Well, I don't believe in people being gay because I'm not gay." But you can't deny that there are, in fact, gay people, and there's studies that show there are people who have that preference throughout their entire lives. You don't have to go through it to believe it. I'm not gay myself, but I don't have to go through that, but I believe gay people exist.
And that's what I'm trying to understand.
Right.
You're telling me the primary reason why you have the belief is personal experience. But if you were to show somebody else how the belief is objectively true, you're telling me that you couldn't do that through personal experience. You would need to do that through a scientific manner or an objective manner.
I believe I would, because if somebody once explained it to me, as a transgender person, you wake up, if you're male, and you know you're in the wrong body, you know something's not right, but you have to live with this body. So imagine if you were cisgender. Cisgender is someone who is not transgender. So you're cisgender.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You wake up in the morning and you're in the body that you feel comfortable with and you feel right with. It's probably very hard for you to understand waking up and feeling that you're in the wrong body. That's probably very difficult for you. And I would get that, because it's very difficult for me to understand what it was like before of waking up in the male body, knowing that I was female.
And I think I do see where you're coming from.
Okay.
I do. I think where I'm coming from is I want to know how you know what you know, and how you know that your belief is true objectively and not just subjectively true to you. And you're telling me the primary way you know that is a personal experience. Yet, if you needed to show somebody else that that belief was true, then you wouldn't rely on personal experience. You'd rely on the data,
I would.
the science.
I would. Just as if somebody...
So why don't you rely on the data, just saying, more than personal experience?
I would say that I rely on personal experience first because I want to understand myself more. I feel this way, therefore I want to understand why I am this way. So I use science to help collaborate that. I say that the reason I would, for myself, believe in it is because it is who I am. If I'm describing it to someone else, it's very hard to do. And people will say, I don't understand it. And I would tell them, you don't have to understand it, but I do have science to back this up. We are a real, here I am, I exist. I think that's why I think that. Number one, I exist as a person whose gender identity does not match their biological sex. So I look at that, that's my 0.0. That's my zero. That's my starting point. And that's why I would rely on that first. But then someone could tell me, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I think you're just making it up.
Yeah.
Well, then I need to show them data. Otherwise, I'm just trying to convince someone of something that they're not going to understand.
Linda, who's sitting next to you.
Hi,
Linda. Linda has a different belief now.
Yes.
Linda believes to her bones that she is AB blood type. She believes it.
Yes.
That is her personal experience. Not sure, I can't get into her head why she believes it, but that is her personal experience, that she believes that she is AB blood type, and that's the primary reason. And if someone challenges her, what could she do to show that person that she is AB blood type? Personal experience, do you think?
No, that's biology again. There is
But with her belief, would you be more likely to trust her personal experience with that she's AB blood type, or some objective data that shows that she's AB blood type?
If she told me she was AB blood type, I would say, that's great. That's how you feel.
Does that make it true?
No, I'm getting to that. No, that is what she tells me her belief is. I would tell her, oh, okay, well, that's nice. If she says, well, no, it's not just nice. I truly believe I'm AB blood type. I would say, let's draw your blood and check it, because there are absolute truths. And I do listen to your podcast. This goes back to the number of flowers in the vase. We can objectively look at it and count the number of flowers. We can't make it 12 if it's 13.
Yeah.
She can't make her blood type be negative, O negative, if it's AB, or the vice versa, rather.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. That's why I use science to supplement it. Linda can tell me that, and I'll say, sure, okay, I believe you.
And I'm here to tell you.
Okay.
And I can just envision emails that I often get. That personal experience can be a perfectly reliable way to know what is true. What I think I'm getting at is that Linda could have the strong personal experience that her blood type is AB when her blood type is not. And I'm wondering why she wouldn't just say the reason why I believe my blood type is AB is because of scientific reasons of why my blood type is AB, as opposed to my personal experience of why my blood type is AB. And I'm sure this analogy isn't perfect.
No, so is her blood type not AB? Is that what you're telling me?
Right.
Right. Okay.
We don't know.
We have a scientific and data gathering way to confirm Linda's blood type.
Yeah.
We have that in place. That could be done I could go up to the Walgreens.
Yeah.
And we could do that.
Right.
There's not a blood test for this. There's not a blood test where somebody can say,
right.
oh, I look at your blood, you're transgender.
Yeah, so it's not a perfect analogy there.
It's not, but I do see where you're coming from. And people who don't experience, this is more of an identity thing. And also it has a lot to do with the social construct that we are given as children to be a certain way when that may or may not match. Identity
so I really
is
want to
tricky.
know this is how could one find out, because it sounds like when we're talking about a gender identity, we're talking about a subjective experience. And I really want to know how is this presented objectively in the data? How do you know what I mean? Like it's an interpretation of something that we're saying is real.
Yes.
Right. How do we know that?
There are studies that show that identical twins are much more likely to both be transgender than
Gotcha.
fraternal twins.
So monozygotic twin studies.
Yes, they're twin studies.
Go ahead.
There are other studies that look at brain differences between transgender people and cisgender people.
Gotcha.
There are some studies there. But as of yet, there's not a way someone can draw your blood. The way that you determine mostly now that if you're transgender is the sense of gender dysphoria that you have throughout your life.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of gender dysphoria.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's interesting. And so by saying that you have gender dysphoria, the way I'm interpreting it in some sense is that you had a belief about yourself that didn't correspond with a reality of how you are.
Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
And for a long time, I just suffered with it. I had no idea what it was. I just know that I couldn't wear a party dress. I couldn't do anything feminine. I couldn't hang around the girls too much because I was constantly being corrected to put in this box. This is like, let's say a person is born a redhead.
Yeah.
That's approximately 2% of the population. So
Right.
not too far from transgender, 1%. And then you tell that red-headed person, you have to dye your hair for the rest of your life. You were born with this gene that gives you red hair, but you cannot be a redhead the rest of your life. You must dye your hair. Of course, we don't tell people that.
Right.
But we do tell people, even as a child, I expressed a desire to do feminine things. I was told, no, you don't get to do that. That's not how it works.
Right, right.
And so we're forcing, again, our gender norms on other people.
Yeah.
On everybody. And for most people, it works fine. For you, it worked fine. It worked fine. You're happy who you are.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Well, I love Dave Chappelle's joke. He says, and he gives transgender people a hard time. And he said, the thing I like about transgender people is at least they figured out what was messing them up.
Yeah. And so, sometimes I'm trying to work and this helps me. And oftentimes I really like to have conversations about beliefs I know little about. And really, because when I'm exploring it, I really try to make this a collaborative relationship and really try to understand what it is I don't know and try to really understand it. We're talking about norms.
Yes.
Right. And are norms in this situation, are norms based on some objective reality, or are norms based on what other people say we should do and should be and how we should act? You know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah.
I think it's a combination of both. That's why I say it's an impossible question for you to answer. How much of who you are today was based on how you were told what gender to be? We can't even separate that.
Is there an objective truth, though, that we may not be able to answer it?
Right.
It may be impossible to answer, but is there an answer? I mean, if we could somehow know everything about the universe, is there an answer there? You know what I mean?
I think the answer there would be that the majority of people on this planet, their biological sex directly corresponds to their gender identity. I believe that is a universal truth.
Yeah.
However, there is a small percentage of the population where that is not true. I believe that to be an objective truth based on research again and observing the world around me and also what I have gone through. But I do believe that we could objectively say there's a masculine brain and there's a feminine brain or female brain. An example, David Ramirez. He was at birth, the doctor accidentally cut off his penis when he was born trying to circumcise him.
Okay.
So they took the organs and they made him into a girl because it's always easier to make a vagina than it is something else. So then he was socialized to be female. He was made to wear dresses. He was made to do all the things that females do.
Did he identify it?
No, he was super unhappy.
Right, gotcha.
And then he transitioned at 15 to be a male when he could take it no longer.
Right.
And he became a famous person. And he said, I know I was born male. There's no doubt in my head. He has a masculine brain.
Yeah.
Sadly, he ended up committing suicide in his 20s or 30s because of everything he had to go through. Sure. So I think there's evidence to prove that there is, in fact, the masculine brain that develops with the male organs.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen in my case.
I understand.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know why I'm hung up on this.
Well,
because it seems the primary reason why you know what you know is a subjective reason. And there are objective reasons available. And it seems like you're putting more weight on what is subjectively true than what could be shown as objectively true.
Are you saying my experience is subjective, though? Because I consider my experience to be objective.
Oh, maybe we're getting to it now. Okay, tell me what you think. Tell me about that.
I believe my experience can be looked at as objective, and the people surrounding me can look at this experience that I have and say, that is a woman. That is definitely a person with a female brain.
Could a person have a subjective experience and be wrong?
I think it's possible, but it is rare. It's very rare. A person could have a subjective experience of maybe thinking that they identify as female, and then later on decide that because it was a subjective opinion of themselves, they discovered they were in fact not.
And I'm not necessarily talking about your belief.
Right.
I'm talking about any belief that I'm wondering whether people are walking around with these subjective beliefs about themselves, and these beliefs could be shown to be objectively incorrect if that person was shown objective information about that belief. I'm not talking about your belief. I'm just saying, generally speaking.
I think all of our beliefs about ourselves are subjective. You may believe a certain religion. That's subjective because you can't prove that religion. You can come up to me and say, I believe this religion because of this, and that. Or I believe that I'm this way because it's the truth, but you can't separate that from how you were raised or the nurture you received. I think all of us have subjective opinions about ourselves.
But you're telling
But I'm
me,
telling me, for me, this is an objective truth because I'm living it. And I do use other forms of evidence to back up that objective belief about myself. But to give you some credit, I do believe you're right. Someone sitting next to me, well, you sitting next to me could look at me and say, well, I believe that what you're telling me is really subjective because you can't give me a blood test. You can't, there's nothing that you don't have a feature, like, for instance, the color of my hair. You can't tell me that you're a redhead. You can't tell me because I can't look at you and see that. So I think all of us have subjective beliefs about ourselves that can't be separated from objective truth. Objective truth comes.
we all have subjective beliefs about ourselves.
Yes, we do.
That could it be said that may or may not be objectively true?
Yes, I believe that because we are
Okay.
constantly discovering
Yeah.
new things about people. That's just a given fact.
You're going to make me break out the Mentos. You're going to make me do it. So, Linda, sitting next to you, believes. She really believes it's her subjective, personal experience that there is an even number of Mentos in this box. How would we know whether her subjective experience of the Mentos is objectively true?
We would take out the Mentos and we would count them.
Yeah.
And we would determine because we can do that. However, you cannot take a slice of my forehead, peel it back, and find a female brain.
And I know,
So I think those are two different
it's an
things.
experience. And
Those are two different things.
I get that.
Okay.
And I get it's an experience that is mapped onto a reality, we're
Yes.
saying. And I get that. I do. But we're also saying that regardless of your perception, that it is objectively true, that there is an objective truth behind your experience of that truth.
For me,
Say it
yes,
again.
for me, that's an objective truth.
Oh, man.
Because I can find nothing to disprove
Okay.
that for me. I can find nothing that does not
Maybe that's a
confirm.
good avenue to go down.
Yes.
Would there possibly be something disconfirming that you could foresee that would have you reduce your, not necessarily change your belief, but reduce your confidence level in the belief? Something disconfirming.
I would tell you that I am always open to new research and new data. And yes, something could come up that might say to me, well, maybe there's a percentage of transgender people out there that may or may not be transgender, or maybe it's something else. For instance, let's say we come up with, I didn't even need my notes. Right?
I told you.
You're absolutely right. When you're passionate about something. I'm sorry, let me get back on track here. You were asking about, would there be some evidence? I would say there could always be some evidence. For instance, let's say that we find there are no genes or anything that relate to transgender, although that we have discovered some variants. But let's say science says, you know what? There are no differences.
Yeah.
I would say, well, I don't know. Maybe scientifically, we can't really prove that gender identity and biological sex match. But then I would tell you, I will fall back on my objective belief And for me, it's true. No matter what sign, no matter
No,
that you
but
tell me.
You're saying my objective
Yes,
belief.
that's my objective truth, because I can't make you believe. And again, it's a belief about myself that is always going to be subjective.
I'm just trying to understand how personal beliefs, personal truths are objective. To me, that's a paradox in my mind.
No.
I'm really trying to understand it. And maybe I'm not. And we could possibly be using different language to talk about things. That's very possible. I'm just trying to understand how.
I understand.
Go ahead.
I understand. When I say objective truth about me, it's because I know, in fact, how I feel about something. But
And
I
I'm
am not
counting that you feel that way.
I understand
am not.
that.
Yes.
I am not going to be a person who tells someone else that their belief in something is not objective. Because to them, it is. I don't think anybody should tell someone, well, that's not really objective. I don't think you should tell anyone that. I don't think you should tell a person who's gay. I don't think you should tell a person who believes in worshiping Buddy Holly or yes, I did listen to your podcast. I don't believe that, because our beliefs are both subjective and objective. To the person who is going
Go ahead.
through it, it is an objective truth to me. But I am not going to tell you it has to be an objective truth for you unless I back it up with scientific data.
How could we have separate objective truths? If I have an objective truth, my objective truth that there are an odd number of Mentos, and Linda has an objective truth that there are an even number of Mentos, it doesn't sound like we're talking about objective truths. And there might be an objective truth about that based on some data. So why don't we talk about that? Why do we talk? Okay.
I have said many times that I believe in all three.
Right. But it seems like the primary reason you believe it is a personal experience. And
yes,
I'm not discounting that personal experience. And you're saying the personal experience is an objective personal experience.
for me.
I think that's what I'm really trying to understand. How a personal experience for me could be objectively true. And I mean, I know it's a personal experience. I get that. That, yes, how could it's a personal experience and no one can say that I didn't have that personal experience. But I guess what I'm saying is that, does that to show that personal experience is mapped onto something that is real.
What I'm doing by telling you it's my objective truth is giving you space to say, but that's subjective. I want to allow you to have that space to say that, to say, but it's subjective. I can't tell you it's subjective to me, because every ounce of my experience and belief that how I feel, you know how you feel.
Yeah.
Let's say you feel...
Have you ever been misgiven about a belief you've had about yourself, that you believe that it's objectively true and it turned out that you were incorrect? It wasn't? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes.
It's happened to me.
It's happened plenty of times. It's happened my entire life.
So I'm saying
it still happens.
So I have this intense belief about myself, and I guess I'm thinking it's objectively true, but it turns out that it wasn't, right? It turns out that it was a subjective experience.
I will allow that. I will allow that.
I think that's what I'm saying.
I will allow that.
And that if I wanted to know whether that belief about myself was true or not, I'm wondering if personal experience was the way to go. Maybe there was another way to go to find out that information objectively. But there's actual science, we're saying, that does show this objectively.
Yes.
And I think that's all what I'm saying is...
You're right.
Is that I'm wondering, and I know the power of personal experience. I get it.
Okay.
And I think that I think what I'm saying is with personal experience, which is very powerful and can be very true, that personal experience in my mind is riddled with biases that we're
True.
not aware of.
True. All of
Confirmation
it is.
biases
Yes.
and who knows what. And
I agree with you.
I could think something is objectively true and it's not. And for me to show that to myself, here we are, here's science that has a manner to root out those biases, and also through doing studies repeatedly and you know, the ways science works, that we can show something is true.
Right.
Excuse me.
That's okay. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, please, please.
I would like to go back to your question.
What?
How do you know this is true about yourself? And so my answer was, I know primarily from my experience about myself. However, if you're saying, okay, Deanna, please tell Linda how you know that that is an objective truth, I would rely on science first to tell her that.
Okay.
So I'm right now I'm
to tell
separating.
yourself the
Right
belief
now I'm
is true.
separating my beliefs about myself from how I would say to someone else
Yes.
about the belief. So if I am to convince you, I will give you scientific data, because you'll never know what it's like to be inside my brain any more than I would know what it's like to be inside yours.
And I understand that. In psychology, there is a therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes, CBT.
Right. And part of how CBT works is that people have beliefs about themselves. And these beliefs are reality tested
Yes.
against the world about whether they're true or not. And the idea behind it is that what a person believes about themselves, it's inherently, could be seen sometimes as inherently flawed, because everyone's seeing themselves through their own lens and that they've created or been given to them or who knows what. And it might not reflect more what is an objective reality. And sometimes we need ways to do that. Sometimes.
Yes, I've been through CBT. CBT helped me to get to the place I am now, that I am, in fact, transgender. CBT also helped me with understanding that some of my behaviors were not so good, which means that I may have thought that my feelings about other people were bad when in fact they were shown to me that those feelings were not really true. So it helped me. But I have been through CBT, and I do know that it took CBT to get me to the point where I could finally admit to myself, this is my authentic self. That's another piece of evidence that's just for me, that I am, in fact, who I am. I have gone through that.
Yeah.
That's been my journey.
Sure.
So for me, that is an objective truth, but it's not an objective truth for you. So what I'm allowing for you is to say, but it's not my truth, so you can't say it's objective.
And then it brings me back to, I'm just not sure how, if two people can have two different objective truths, I'm not saying that mine is different, but if two people can have two objective truths then that are different, then seems to me that by definition, it wouldn't be an objective truth. Because an objective truth, to me,
what is an objective truth to you?
Objective truth is a truth that is true, and it doesn't matter what I believe about it. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. It doesn't matter whether I'm even alive. That truth is true.
Okay. Let's say that you were living in the time before Galileo or Copernicus, and your objective truth, because everybody told you that the universe revolves around the earth.
Yes.
That's your objective truth. You believe that. No, that's what everyone believed at the time.
I think we're talking about a definition difference then.
No, but that is the objective truth that you believe. But we have come to find out, and science has to give room for this, that we find out that objective truths were a lot of times subjective truths.
Right. And so I could live back in the day and believe, that the sun circles around the earth, and I could believe that it's an objective truth, but it doesn't sound like it was it sounds like I was wrong. It sounds like the objective truth is the opposite.
Right. We're constantly rediscovering the world.
So it was a subjective belief.
Yes.
Okay. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Well, we met there. Yes, I agree. And
so I think maybe we're using the words objective differently.
Right. They're hard terms to define because, and here we could get into saying there are no absolute truths because we're constantly rediscovering new ideas about the world. What's objective now may not be objective.
I'm trying to understand how I believe about the sun circling the earth or the earth circling the sun, how that has anything to do with the objective truth about that answer.
Because what I was saying was that an objective truth is a way that you can look at the world and invoke science to determine that it's an objective truth. So we realize that, in fact, the universe does not revolve around the earth. Our planets
so it wasn't an objective truth.
But we thought it was at the time. And we can come up with current beliefs about that, too.
Yeah.
That weren't correct. So I guess what I'm saying is, do you consider objective an absolute truth?
Yes. I consider when I'm thinking objective truth, I think of absolute universal truth that what I think about it, what they thought about in the past, what they think about in the future, I could think about it incorrectly or correctly. It doesn't matter. That truth is true. Well, it just is.
What happens when you're presented with evidence that goes against your objective truth? What do? Do you ignore it?
The objective truth is, it doesn't matter what I think about it. Whether I'm presented evidence or not presented evidence, if I'm presented evidence that the sun circles the earth, or if I'm presented evidence that the earth circles the sun, it doesn't matter to the objective truth. I can think about it any way I want.
But you don't know all the truths.
I don't know.
You don't know all the truths.
I don't know. So it doesn't change whether that thing is objectively true or not.
But it's only objective to you because that's the truth you know. And it's just the same as it's considered an objective truth that women are bad at math and science and men are better. A lot of people had that objective truth, but it turns out that's not true.
But so it wasn't, and it was never an objective truth.
Do we ever have an objective truth?
Whether the sun circles the earth or the earth circles the sun, do you not think that there is an objective truth?
There is now. What I'm saying is it depends on the time period. I'm using that as an example we live in a time period now where we do not...
period change that?
Because
I'm really trying to understand.
No, what I'm saying is back then, people who thought that considered that an objective truth.
But they were wrong.
They were wrong.
So
just as you were wrong about things and I am wrong about things.
Right.
That we will find out later, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road.
I really think I think this is a problem with language. I think we're really...
Let's change the language.
Tell
me how you define objective.
I think we're really trying to talk about the same thing here, and we're just using... This is so interesting. I guess what I'm saying is I'm really trying to put this in a better language, and I apologize because I know I'm not coming up with the words that I'm trying to come up with to really explain myself, and I apologize. I really think this is my issue here. That when I think about something that is objectively true, like the earth circling the sun, that is something separate. That is the objective truth about reality, about the universe.
Same as your Mentos and flowers.
Same as the Mentos and the flowers.
That's all different.
And that is kind of a stationary fact.
That's my point I was getting to.
Yeah.
Yes, that's my point.
Right.
Those can be proven.
And I couldn't possibly have an objective truth to the contrary, because by definition, it's not objective.
So are you saying that objective truths are absolute truths?
Yes.
How do you know what's an
I might
absolute
not
truth?
know. I might not know.
So can we ever say objective then? If you don't know, what you have just admitted to me is we never really know.
I'm not.
Isn't it?
I'm just trying to understand whether we know or not know has anything to do with that objective truth.
It has to do with the fact that what you believe is objective for you may not be, in fact, the absolute truth. At one time, you may have believed that there was a tooth fairy that came and gave you a quarter for your tooth. You would have believed that.
Mhm.
You would have said, yes, I believe in Santa Claus. I believe in the
But
tooth
it
fairy.
wasn't an objective truth.
But you believe that it was.
So
but you're saying that was your absolute truth when in fact it wasn't.
But the objective truth, how could I have an objective truth about something that's not objectively true?
That's my point. You did not know because you didn't have all the facts, but you believed it to be objective. Just as 20 years from now, there will be beliefs you say, you know what? I thought that was an objective truth, but it turns out it's not because you're saying objective truth is absolute truth. And we don't know that. We don't know that until science comes along and tells us.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, man. I'm probably just going to get railed on this video because I'm not understanding it. I'm just so dense.
Or maybe.
I don't know.
It's me. Maybe I'm not explaining. Okay. Well, I think we did get hung up on the meaning of words too much.
Maybe.
I think we did. I think we got, because what I came on to talk about,
I'm really trying to understand where you're coming from.
On the meaning of objective and subjective.
Yeah.
And maybe that's not what I want to talk about here today.
Well, I understand that. And I wasn't meant to talk about that too, but I think that without us understanding where we're coming from there, it's kind of hard to, I really want to understand where you're coming from. And I find it so hard. And I don't know why I'm having such difficulty. And
is it the gender identity part?
No.
Okay.
It's just how we're talking about objective and subjective truth. That's it. That's where I am completely at a loss. And I don't know if it's a failure of language and we're not talking about the same things correctly. And I really just can't wait to look at this again to really understand what I'm not
Maybe we'll
getting.
have a part two.
Please. And I know that people are going to watch this and they're going to come up with solutions to this that I'm just not seeing. I'm just probably in my own head about it.
Yeah, and Mark, you have to understand, I'm only talking about objective truth in the sense of my identity. What is objective to me about how I feel about my identity is true because I am the one who feels it. So 100%, I know how I feel about this.
Yeah,
but it is subjective for you. I'm not telling you it's subjective for you because, again, we don't have that litmus test.
I see how it is objective for you in the sense that you feel that.
I do feel that. 100%.
How can I say that what you feel is not objective? I get that.
Okay. Well, we're getting closer.
I get that. And maybe that's all what you're saying, that it's subjective in the sense that I feel it. And sure, I understand that. And I think what I'm saying is that I could feel other things. I could feel that there are an odd number of Mentos in this box. I could feel that that's an objective truth. But
no, you can't.
I can't feel that?
No, you can't, because we'll take them out right now and we'll count them and we will immediately determine how many there are. And this is what I'm telling you is there's no way that I can take a blood test. You could peel open my brain.
But we're saying that there is, but we're saying with the belief that there is a way, that there is an objective scientific way that we can, your belief, as stated, that there are ways that we can do that.
there are ways that we can support my objective truth. My objective truth is I believe that my biological sex did not correspond with my gender identity.
Yeah.
That's me.
I get it.
I believe it. And
I get it.
It's 100% my belief.
I get it.
Okay. You can't pull me open and count the number of Mentos inside me and say, "Oh yeah, she is trans." This is we are saying two separate things. I'm saying it's an objective truth for me.
Yeah.
Because I believe it 100%. I would not have gone through what I've gone through.
I hear you.
On a willy-nilly.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Okay.
I'm not just, I'm going to listen to this, and I know I'm going to come across how I really don't want to come across. I'm not discounting your personal experience with this. I'm not.
Let's say this.
Man.
Let's say this. Let's say
Yes,
this. I believe what I believe, and I'm telling you that's my objective truth, is my belief. But let's say that I write a paper on being transgender.
Yeah.
I write a paper. I am not going to rely as a way to prove my point on my personal belief.
Right.
I'm not going to.
Right. The
Because
same thing
to
with
other
this.
people, it's
my
subjective.
personal belief about Mentos, I'm not going to rely on just what I
Exactly.
believe about it.
Exactly.
I'm going to rely on, we're going to count them. There's something
gonna count
objective that we can do.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that's all I'm saying.
Okay, so maybe we did get to a point where we needed to. Again, if I was to write a paper, I would not start off by saying, I know this is an objective truth because I feel it.
Okay.
No, it's my truth. It's my truth. That's not your truth. It's my truth. Just as you have truths about yourself.
Right.
Right. So I will rely on data and scientific research to prove my point in my paper.
I think we're going to need a part 2. I do. I think I need help, and I think I'm going to. There's going to be a lot. I'm going to get a lot of suggestions about this. I'm going to get railed about this. I know I am.
I'm sure they won't all be positive for me.
I know it, and but I will accept it, and I will because I'm just.
I'm sure
sometimes
there'll be a lot against me, or this is what you need to say to her.
I am not the smartest man in the room, and sometimes I get hung up on stuff, and I can be completely wrong about it. And definitely when I'm like looking back at my own videos, I am a harsh critic of myself. So
well, I am for myself
please
too.
just be helpful when you hear about this. I really want to figure out how I'm not seeing this correctly, because I really want to talk about this in a correct way. And with part 2, I think I'm at an impasse with myself. At part 2, maybe I'll have some help, and you'll be able to read the comments just as much as me, and we'll be able to take up where we left off, which I think is wonderful. This is what discourse is all about. This is a collaboration. This is what I love about talking to people about their beliefs, is that we can figure out where each other are coming from, and if I'm incorrect with the way I'm seeing something, I absolutely want to know it. I imagine you would want to know it too.
I do.
Exactly. Good.
Yes, I believe in the further pursuit of knowledge. I believe that our absolute truths and objectivity can change over time. It's very possible for that to happen to me, but we are here right now, and I'm telling you, my statement to you is, I objectively believe that I am transgender.
And I don't know why. I don't know.
Tell me what you're hung up on. I want to help. I really do.
I know you do, but I think, and I want to help myself. I don't know what question to ask at this point. I am completely at a loss. I think, and it could just be the definition of words. It could be just rhetoric.
Yes, and a lot of that is what words are, the meaning we put behind them. Arguments can come down to that. Well, what do you mean when you say this, or when you say objective, subjective? What do you mean when you say?
I think I've gotten
when you say dysphoria. What do you mean by that? Is there a blood test for that? No, but there can be a mental health diagnosis of that.
Right.
But
and I think I've just gotten to the point where I'm not even sure what question to ask at this point.
Yeah.
But I'm in it, and I want to learn, and I want to understand. And I want to know why I'm not understanding it. So this will be a part 2. If you're game.
I'm game.
Thank you. Thank you. And you're helping me.